you so much for coming. My name's Lisa, and I'm going to be talking to you about plant-based diets and using superfoods to increase the nutrients that you get in your plant-based diet. So, first of all, I'd like to talk about allergies and intolerances. I'm sorry about the PowerPoint. It's a bit squished. Okay, perfect. She's telling me it's the only slide that's off, so it'll be better in the next one. So, allergies and intolerances are on the rise these days, as you know. And there's a few reasons that people speculate for this. First of all, our changing environment, so the pollution that's crowding our environment these days. Others believe that it's antibacterial soaps that are causing people to build up immunity and resistance to bacteria out there. Others think GMO foods and chemically treated products are causing the allergies. And finally, our high processed diets are working against our immune systems. But for whatever the reason, we can't deny the statistics. So the Center for Disease Control states that over a 20-year period, allergies in children increased by almost 20%, which is huge. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the difference between allergies and intolerances. I always thought that intolerances sounded like less of a problem than allergies, but in fact, they can be just as painful and just as uncomfortable as allergies. So allergies are caused by the IgE antibody. So if you think about the antibody, what it does is it goes through your body and it tries to find threats, so things that are threatening your life. And then once it finds something, it tells your immune system, go get it. And so when that happens, all of your body reacts, and the reaction can actually be life-threatening in that case. And sometimes what happens is the IgE antibody makes a mistake and it sees a protein in a vegetable or a wheat or grain, and it thinks that it's actually dangerous when maybe it's not, but it perceives it as a threat, and it will send all the full forces out and you'll have an allergy to that particular food. So for example, the protein in wheat. So an intolerance is a little different. So an intolerance isn't from the immune system response. It is when something in your body just isn't quite working up to par. So for example, many people are lactose intolerant. Is anybody lactose intolerant? Yeah, so your body is just not producing the lactase enzyme that's needed to break down the lactose, which is the sugar in milk. And so when you have that, you have what's called an intolerance to milk. And so food intolerances may be less severe. You won't probably die from them, but you can see that they're just as uncomfortable as allergies in many ways. So my particular problem is celiac disease. And I was going to lie to you and say I'm 28, but I'll tell the truth. I'm actually 43, so I didn't think you'd believe me that I was 28. So in 1970, I was diagnosed with celiac disease. And I almost died, actually, because at that time, there were barely any celiacs diagnosed in British Columbia or Canada, for that matter. The disease was very prevalent in Europe and Ireland, especially. But there was very little knowledge, and so my doctor had no idea why I was shriveling away and dying and having terrible diarrhea and massive symptoms, and nobody could seem to explain what was going on. It was just by chance that there was a visiting doctor from Europe who recognized the symptoms and thought maybe that might be the problem, so he saved my life. And also at that time, there was barely any gluten-free products, so my poor mom had to make everything from scratch. And in that time, we had cookie day every day at school, cookie time. And so my mom would send me to school with rice cookies so I would feel good. And she told me I had a special tummy, so she made it all okay. So I wanted to share with you another experience of mine. So I actually was diagnosed with, told I had bulimia when I was 8 years old. And that developed into full-blown anorexia when I was 12, and at 14 I was actually hospitalized. But interestingly enough, all my symptoms went away when I went backpacking around Europe and landed in the Mediterranean in Greece. And then the symptoms came back with a vengeance when I returned to England during the winters. So I'd spend summers basically in Greece, and then in the winters I'd go back to England. And what I've now come to learn is the diet I was eating had a huge role in this. So when I was in Greece, I was mainly eating plant-based diet with a few variances like cheese and eggs thrown in. I've always been a vegetarian. I never liked the taste of meat, so I haven't had meat since I was about 8 years old. I'm not sure actually last time I ate it. But you can see the diet that I had in Greece, and then contrast that with the diet I ate in England when I was working at a fast food restaurant and eating a lot of French fries because they're actually cooked with other gluten products like deep fried food, of course, fish and chips and whatnot. And I did actually eat bread at that point. I didn't want to admit that I had celiac disease, so I ate bread. What I came to learn, sorry, I forgot to tell you part of the story. My mom got very sick, and I was actually placed into a different family when I was 6 years old, and my celiac was not acknowledged by that family, so I was eating bread the whole time, and that's why I got so sick with bulimia and anorexia. And I'll explain that to you now. Actually, oops, back. Sorry, yes. I realized quite recently, actually, that I wasn't alone in my problems with celiac and bulimia. If you Google on anywhere, celiac and bulimia, you will find hundreds of testimonials just like this one from wheatbellyblog.com of people reporting the similar symptoms and feeling the need to vomit or not eat at all. And actually, research has proved, so there's been quite a few studies. I've just put UCell's study up here, but research has actually proved that many celiacs are misdiagnosed as bulimics and anorexics because the symptoms are so similar. So when you have celiac, you get a buildup of sprue in your system, and the only reprieve you have is to vomit. You can't keep food inside of you. And so what consequently happens is you just don't eat anymore, and your system becomes so damaged or not retaining any minerals or vitamins, so you end up being really malnutritioned and looking like you're anorexic. So I was actually hospitalized for anorexia when I loved food and would eat as much as I could, but the problem was my stomach was so damaged, and the way I tried to repair it was by eating cream of wheat. So, oops. So I got really, really, really sick. So I thought I'd share that with you. It's very interesting stuff. And it gets even worse. So wheat actually plays a role in binge eating disorder. So studies show that the gliadin in wheat was manipulated in the 1970s by genetic scientists who wanted to yield larger crops of wheat. And so it was actually manipulated, and just a few little changes to the amino acids caused it to become an appetite enhancer. So an appetite stimulant. So it's actually addictive, and it binds to your opiate receptors in your brain. And instead of feeling high like you would with heroin, you feel hungry. So the more you eat wheat, the hungrier you get. And in some people, it becomes an actual disorder, and you just can't stop grazing and eating. So it actually seems quite evil to me, wheat, now. I can't, yeah. So I did fight against being gluten-free. I didn't want to be a celiac, of course. I loved bread. I loved cookies. I loved everything. And when I first was introduced to gluten-free products, I was like, woohoo! I can eat everything and I won't get sick. But then I gained 30 pounds, and I was like, oh, no, this isn't good. So I realized that the gluten-free products, while they are extremely tasty and wonderful, and they make you feel like a normal person if you have celiac or gluten intolerances, they are very highly refined and they are quite fattening. Sometimes they have as much as 3 times the amount of calories and fats as regular products. So please keep them as treats only. And for myself, I realized that the only way I could stay healthy was to switch to a whole food plant-based diet. And I've learned over the years to supplement that diet with nutrient-dense superfoods. So according to Ann Barnes, who wrote Eat Super, Be Super, she describes superfoods as having these criteria. So first of all, they must have macronutrients. They also have to have micronutrients. And they also have to have some sort of health benefit, like cure disease or prevent disease, cure disease. And I was just wondering if you would like to shout out maybe some ideas of superfoods that would fit this criterion. Anybody? What do you? Goji berries, yes. What else? Yes, chia seeds, hemp. Don't forget the hemp. Right, so I'm going to be talking about these today. So quinoa, can you see? Sorry. Quinoa, goji berries, chia seeds, hemp seeds, coconut, cacao, and dates, which aren't technically a superfood, but I'll explain that later. So let's start with quinoa. So quinoa is the most powerful food to come out of the Andean mountains of Peru and Bolivia. And about 5,000 years ago, the indigenous people there believed that, the Incas believed that quinoa was a spiritual enhancer. It had spiritually enhancing qualities. And they were probably right because the Inca warriors were able to walk through, march for many days. The armies were able to march for many days without eating any animal protein at elevations of 12,000 feet. With only what they called were war balls, which were quinoa mixed with animal fat. So no animal protein, just the fat. And when the Spanish invaded in the 1700s, they actually saw how powerful the Inca were by eating this quinoa. So what they did was they said, you can't grow quinoa anymore, so that they could dominate the people. And it ended up being very detrimental to the health to the Incas. Infant mortality rose, people got diseases. It was devastating for the Incas, and the Spanish invaded quite successfully. But the Inca were smart. They grew it in secret in the mountainous regions, and that plant, the quinoa plant, actually survived extreme drought, extreme frost, and intense UV rays. It's a very durable plant. Actually, quinoa is not technically a grain. It's kind of interesting. It's cultivated and used similarly to a grain, but it's actually a fruit from a broadleaf plant, and it's from the same family as spinach and beets. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Quinoa is actually a complete protein because it contains all of the essential amino acids. So amino acids are the building blocks of protein. My husband's just passing around a sample of quinoa, so hopefully it'll go all the way around. So take a look, open it up if you want, and take a look at the product. So it's a building block of protein, and you probably know proteins build everything in our bodies, our muscles, our cells, everything. Proteins are the building blocks of life. So amino acids are usually created in our own bodies, but we have 9 amino acids that are called essential because it's essential you eat them every day. We don't build them ourselves, so you have to eat them every day to survive. And so quinoa is actually, the composition of amino acids in quinoa is actually higher than wheat, barley, rice, or soybeans, so it has a really good protein base. It's also higher in iron and calcium than rice, wheat, corn, or barley. So that makes it a really good alternative for people who are trying to switch away from gluten diets. And because of its survival in in intense conditions, it's got a lot of antioxidants. Antioxidants form in plants when they have to survive in extreme conditions. They're what protect the plants, and consequently, they're what protect us when we eat those plants. Quinoa also has a lot of soluble fiber. I think I need to be here. Yes. It has a lot of soluble fiber. So that means that as it goes through your system, it helps clean out your digestive tracts. It takes all the dirt and grunge down the way and it flushes your system out and makes it much healthier. It also feeds your intestinal flora, makes it all healthy. So it's really, really healthy for people with celiac disease especially. You can actually quinoa is sold as a grain or a flour, so you can use it for many different types of recipes, and I'll show you some in a minute. But I do want to warn some people have an allergic response to quinoa that is as severe as a gluten intolerance, so it can provoke diarrhea and bloating and stomach pain. So just a little warning. So here are some ideas of how to use quinoa. So you can replace it as a side dish for salads or dinners. You can use the flour for cooking and baking. You can make wonderful veggie patties. I add quinoa to my smoothies sometimes for texture. And yeah, you can eat it for breakfast. You can eat it for lunch. You can eat it for dinner. Anytime is quinoa time. All right, so the next one is goji berries. How many of you have tried gojis? Do you love gojis? I love gojis. So Kevin's just going to hand gojis out and show you what they're like. So actually, gojis have been around in Asian medicine for about 2,000 years. And there's actually a poem from the Tang Dynasty that says, "Goji nourishes body and soul, drink of the well and enjoy long life." So that's a 2,000-year-old poem about the goji. And actually, the Tibetan healers use goji for a number of treatments. For example, to treat the liver or kidney problems or skin and eye problems. They also use it for more serious diseases such as tuberculosis or diabetes, and for mental problems such as anxiety or insomnia. So it's quite a versatile plant for healing according to the Tibetan healers. The goji, oops, yeah, that's okay. Goji is also called the wolfberry, and they believe that's because its genus name is Lycion, which is close to lycos. You might know lycos from what? Werewolves, right? Lycanthropes? No? Okay. So lycos means wolf in Greek. So it's also called the wolfberry. It's also a very resilient plant. It lives in over 100 degrees Fahrenheit or in minus 40 degrees. All it needs is soil that can drain, and it will survive. So that means it's really high in antioxidants, and antioxidants, what they do is they fight the free radicals in our body. So as you know, oxygen keeps us alive, but it also can kill you. And it is what eventually kills all of us, is oxygen. So oxygen actually attacks all of our cells, unfortunately. And it starts with the oxidation of free radicals in our body. So free radicals, you can think of them as like little gang members going around in your body looking for other cells to convert to their gangs and kill you. And what antioxidants do is they neutralize those horrible gang members, and they stop them from causing aging effects and from other diseases and nerve cell damage and other problems that are stem from free radical damage. So gojis are so rich in antioxidants. They have 10 times more antioxidants than blueberries and 3 times more antioxidants than pomegranate. So they're known as extreme immune boosters. They're absolutely wonderful. And they're also very low glycemic fruit, which makes them really good for people with hypoglycemia or diabetes, because they do not make your blood sugar go up high fast. Your blood sugar will raise slowly and at an even pace. So they're quite good. That means low glycemic. They also contain cyperone, so they promote healthy heart and regulate blood pressure. So another warning to you, though, if you're on drugs like warfarin or diabetes medications or blood thinners, blood pressure drugs, the goji berry is probably not something you should take unless you consult your doctor. Just because it does have those natural healing properties, it would mean you're getting a double dose of your medicine, so it could interact with your medicine. Also, if you're pregnant, it's best not to eat gojis because they contain betaine, which is an aborticide substance. So it can induce miscarriages. It's not got a lot of it, but there is the possibility, so just be careful. With the gojis. All right, so here's how to use them, some ideas of how to use them. So you can eat them raw. They're delicious raw. Put them in your trail mix. You can eat them on cereal or yogurt. You will see them in herbal teas as well. Has anybody tried David's tea? Yeah, so he puts them in the mango lassi, I think, tea. It's quite yummy. So yeah, gojis are perfect. The next one, sorry about the PowerPoint. I had it perfect before. So the chia. This is not the chia. Do you remember those ones? It's not that chia. Okay, so chia was the main staple of the Mayans and the Aztec people, and it was their vital energy source. And they used it in beverages, in flour. They pressed it for oil. They used it as medicine. And they even offered it to the gods. In fact, the Aztecs used it as a running food. So what that means is they would give little pouches to their messengers, and the messengers would eat those to keep energy up as they ran from city to city delivering messages. So it's pretty powerful energy supply. But Spanish invasion in the 1700s realized the potency and the power that the Incas got from their chia. So guess what they did? They banned it. So our chia plants almost didn't survive. It was only due to some South American growers who got together with a growing project to revive them. And so now most of our chia that we have today is from that growing project in the 1990s. So we're grateful for that. Nutrition. So chia is actually the richest source of omega-3 that you can get from plants. And most North Americans are actually quite deficient in omega-3. And this is because of the change, North American meat eaters anyway, beef eaters. This is due to the change in diet that the cows have suffered in the last while. So now cows are fed grain rather than grass. And all was good for them when they were eating grass, and all was good for us when they were eating grass, because there was a balance of omega-3 and omega-6 in their meat. But now, since they're only eating grain, there's an overabundance of omega-6, and there's no omega-3 in their meat. So most North Americans are actually quite deficient in omega-3, and the ratio should be of omega-3 to 6 should be 4:1 or less. Optimal is 1:1. And the reason for this is because overconsumption of omega-6 without the balancing omega-3 creates inflammation in our bodies and can contribute to arthritis and also to things like cancer. So it's very important that we get enough omega-3 in our diets to keep us healthy. Also, for people with dietary issues, and especially digestive issues, omega-3 is very important to help emulsify and absorb the nutrients that you eat every day. Chia is also an excellent source of protein. 23% of its calories are protein. So research shows also that eating chia can reduce blood sugar levels by 40% by slowing down the conversion of carbs in your body to simple sugars. So it's a very good source, a very good food for people with diabetes or hypoglycemia. And for anybody who's watching their weight, the goopy consistency of chia also is an appetite suppressant. So when you add chia to your cereal, it makes you not as hungry. And it prolongs digestion, so it gives the body an ability to absorb the minerals that you're eating, the vitamins and minerals that you're eating. So here's some ways to use the chia. So you can add it to your yogurt. You can actually add it to sauces to thicken. And one thing that I found that was super interesting, I used it to make jam. So instead, I don't eat animal products, so instead of gelatin, I used it to make jam, and it ended up working the same as if I'd used gelatin. So good. So the next plant is the hemp. So my favorite plant, and I'm not a pothead, but the hemp plant is actually an extremely versatile plant. It's actually a lifesaver. I think if we grew hemp in Africa, we would save the people. The Chinese were the first to discover the qualities, the amazing qualities of the hemp seed and the hemp product plant. And the Chinese were also the first inventors of paper. But the Chinese used it about 2,000 years, 3,000, 4,000 years ago, sorry. 5,000 years ago? Yep, more, 6,000, whatever. So they used it for paper, cloth, food, fishing nets, and boat sails. So that's where we get the name cannabis from the word canvas, which is interesting. And they actually brought the plant to North America in the 1700s. And quite interestingly, the Declaration of Independence was actually written on hemp parchment because George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and John Adams were all hemp farmers. So think about that one. The downfall came when William Randolph Hearst and the DuPont company found that hemp was actually competing and threatening their petroleum-based synthetic textile industry. And so big business won as usual, and hemp was deemed illegal to grow or use in the US in 1937. And then in 1938, it was deemed illegal to grow and use in Canada as well, which is too bad because the superfood is so tasty. It's one of the tastiest superfoods, actually. And the soluble fiber lowers LDL cholesterol. So there's actually good and bad cholesterol. I know cholesterol is a bad rep, but there is actually good cholesterol. The bad cholesterol is LDL cholesterol. And what it does is as it travels through your blood system, it builds up plaques on your vein walls and arteries, and it actually shrinks your arteries and makes them harder, which can lead to things like heart attack or stroke. So we need to lower the LDL cholesterol in our bodies and raise the HDL, which is the good cholesterol in our bodies. Hemp is also a good soluble fiber, so once again, it helps protect that culinary tract, your digestive tract. And it's also rich in both omega-3 and omega-6, so it's got a good balance of the amino acids. Hemp also is a great protein source, and it offers GLA, gamma-linolenic acid, which is a high anti-inflammatory agent, which also inhibits allergic reactions. So it's very good if you have allergies to take hemp. It will limit the extreme response to any allergies. And GLA is not found in many many foods. It's found only in spirulina, which is another technical superfood, and also mother's milk. Those are the only other sources you can find GLA in food. So hemp is great for that as well. And here's some ways that you can use hemp. So hemp can also be turned into a milk, so you can drink hemp milk. And there's flour, there's, you can use the hearts or just the seeds themselves. I often add hemp to my smoothies in the morning, and it helps with a protein boost. So coconut. So it's been said the coconut, or they found fossil evidence that the coconut's been around for 55 million years. So they almost witnessed the dinosaurs, not quite. But it shows it's a very durable fruit. And you know, the more durable the fruit, it seems the more super it is. So because it's shaped and looks a little bit like a human head, it was called the fruit of the gods by many indigenous people. And actually, the tree has many, many purposes. So the roots were used as dyes and medicines. The trunks were used as building materials and also paper. The shell, we learned when we went to Hawaii, can be used as a barbecue charcoal. It's a much cleaner burning agent. The husk is used as rope or coarse cloth or even mattresses, creates mattresses. And the leaves themselves have been used for roofing in tropical countries. And the food is also just as versatile. So the food, you can use coconut, sorry, stuck on hemp. You can use coconut as an oil, a flour, a milk, water, meat, sugar, and nectar. And actually, the nectar can be fermented into a vinegar or even an alcohol. I thought that was interesting. So in Sanskrit, it's called kalpa vriksha, which means tree which provides all necessities of life. And if you've ever watched Gilligan's Island, then you'll know that to be true. So hemp is also very high in fiber, so it keeps that LDL cholesterol low. And it's very anti-inflammatory, so it really helps out your digestive tract if you've got IBS or colitis or Crohn's even. And here's some happy news. So hemp is a medium-chain triglyceride. So it's a saturated fat, but because it's a medium-chain triglyceride, it doesn't store in your fat cells. So it's the saturated fat you can eat and not get fat from. Yay! And it has a really high burning point as well. So you can use it for cooking. It's actually more optimal than using corn oil. It also has ferulic acid, which is has anti-tumor properties for people who are worried about cancer or breast cancer. And it reduces blood sugar levels and heals damaged livers and kidneys. And what's really interesting about hemp, in World War II, they had very little blood plasma. And so what they did was they used coconut water, not the milk. Don't use the milk. But the water, they used it as plasma drips for IVs. And they used it to save lives, of course. It's very sterile, and in fact, the compound is actually more like intracellular fluid. It's more closer to intracellular fluid, but mixed with blood plasma, it actually works like a saline. It's a little bit low in electrolytes and a little too high in potassium for our body's optimal performance, but it'll do in a pinch. So that's how healthy coconut is. And here's some ways to use it. So coconut is so versatile, and I think my husband just handed out some sugar, some flour, and some flakes. But you can also eat the meat and use the water. And the water is actually a really good source of electrolyte replacement. So if you're working out a lot, it's a great drink to have after, especially like a Bikram yoga class. All right. How many people love chocolate? Oh, come on, don't lie. Everybody does. Okay, so we're going to talk about cacao. So it's the main ingredient, of course, in chocolate. And it's been consumed and traded for over 2,000 years. So it originated in the northern regions of South America. And the Mayans, interestingly enough, had similar uses for cacao as we do today for chocolate. So they used it as I do, as a mood enhancer. It always makes me feel so much happier when I have a nice dark chocolate bar right in front of me and a TV, right? I'm not that lazy. Yes, I am. Okay. But they also used it as gifts for weddings and other ceremonies. And the Aztecs, I thought this was really clever. They used it as currency. How great would it be if we traded chocolate instead of money? So the Spanish invaded, but interestingly, they didn't ban this plant. I wonder why. Instead, they brought it back to Europe with them. And there, it became the rich man's pleasure. And over there, they used it as an aphrodisiac and also to treat maladies. Actually, there's a few surprises about chocolate that I want to share with you. So it does have a complete protein, and it also contains tryptophan and mood-enhancing B vitamins, which are essential for the body's production of serotonin. And serotonin is our relaxing hormone. So cacao is scientifically proven to make you happy. Yay! So there, you have your ticket to eat cacao as much as you want, and you'll stay happy. It's also extremely high in antioxidants. But the sad news is, as soon as it's processed into dark chocolate, or even worse, milk chocolate, it doesn't have those antioxidant properties anymore. Darn. It also has, and I always have a hard time pronouncing this, phenylethylamine. I should have written it on the slide, I'm sorry. But what that is, is the hormone that's produced when we fall in love. So if you eat cacao, you will have the feeling like you're light and in love. Even more surprising, cacao helps with weight loss because it's an appetite suppressant. And it contains chromium. So it stabilizes your blood sugar. Chromium stabilizes your blood sugar and makes you not as hungry. It also contains theobromine, which prevents tooth decay. Who knew? So theobromine kills the streptococcal bacteria, the mutans, which cause tooth decay. So eating cacao can actually prevent cavities. How to use it? So here are some ways that you might want to use cacao nibs, beans, or powder. The nibs are so tasty if you want to add them into cookies or on top of yogurt or in smoothies. It gives a bit of a crunch. The powder is, of course, used in baking all the time. And add the full beans into trail mix for a treat. So the last one on my list is dates. So dates are not technically a superfood because they don't have a complete protein. They don't have all the essential amino acids in them. But they do taste delicious, and they do prevent disease and are highly nutritious with micro and macronutrients. Micronutrients, vitamins, and minerals. And I wanted to add this as another one for you to think about if you are switching to a gluten-free diet, because you can make a lot of desserts out of dates, and it helps you not feel so bad about skipping the chocolate cake or the cheesecake that you miss at parties. You can make date cake that tastes pretty rich and pretty chocolatey and pretty wonderful. It helps me get through those situations anyway. So they come from the date palm trees in the Middle East, and they produce that pure sweet goodness naturally. So they're a great sugar alternative. They're extremely high in iron, and they also help with metabolizing and absorbing proteins and carbs. So they're really great for celiacs who have damaged intestinal tracts. They contain tannins as well, which are known as being anti-infective, anti-hemorrhagic, and also anti-inflammatory. So they also help with elimination. They're a good fiber, and they help lower that pesky LDL cholesterol, the dangerous cholesterol. So here's some ways that you might use dates. So this is where. So I make a lot of energy bars and squares with dates. And for appetizers, you can stuff them with nuts or cheeses. You can add them to your smoothies to make your smoothies a little bit softer. Oh, people have a funny look on their face. I don't like dates, they say. I actually blend them in carbonated water, blend them and then add them to carbonated water, and it tastes a little bit like a soda. Or use them in dressings and sauces. And finally, trail mix. So, thank you for joining me today. I'll stick around here for some questions for a few minutes, and then I'll be over at the Mums Food court over there if you want to talk more. But thank you for joining me.